And the second variable that influences the generation of conscious ignorance by an ignorant person or by a student is the task the student is involved in and the goals associated to this task. This may be illustrated in a study on learning by questioning carried out by Racer, Langston and Baggett, where students had to explore a database on woodwind instruments in order to carry out two different tasks. In one condition, they had to design a wind instrument. This was a relatively complex task, and they had to carry out this task by asking questions using this database. The second condition was a simple condition, and it consisted in simply assembling a band to play in a party, in a New Year's Eve party. This was a simple condition. The researchers were interested in the questions that students asked in the two conditions that corresponded to the complex task or to the simpler tasks. What they found is that causal, complex, relatively complex questions were more frequent in the design condition than in the assemble condition. In the later condition, the questions were mainly taxonomic or definitional. They were simpler questions corresponding to a simpler kind of conscious ignorance than questions asked in the context of the more complex task. Therefore, this points to the importance or the relation between the task and the goal of the questioner, or the student in this case, and the conscious ignorance, the quality of the conscious ignorance the questioner, the student, is aware of. According to the previous exposition or presentation, we could synthesize some conclusions about conscious ignorance and its role in teaching and education in general. Conscious ignorance can play positive roles in education. As I mentioned before, ignorance has been studied with a focus on its negative side, but one type of ignorance, conscious ignorance, could play positive roles in education and in teaching and learning. Conscious ignorance should not be considered an simply undifferentiated lack of knowledge. It has a certain structure, it has certain components that are considered differently in different situations. The second important idea regarding conscious ignorance is that it is actively built by questioners or by students in the classroom, depending on at least two variables. One variable is the knowledge of the student, of the ignorant student, or the knowledge of the questioner. More elaborated knowledge corresponds to more elaborated ignorance. The second variable that influenced the building of conscious ignorance is the task in which the ignorant person is involved in, and the goals associated to this task. For instance, awareness of causal or explanation unknowns, a type of ignorance of a high quality, relatively high quality ignorance, results from deep understanding goals, or results from goals of a higher quality. The quality of goals associated to a task is associated also to the quality of ignorance students may be aware of.